Channel 5 is the station to watch in central Iowa, mainly because Roseanne is on every weeknight at 6:30.
You're watching Channel 5.
I saw them dropping hand grenades and shooting down the hill at the dead bodies. Then I looked up and saw the people from the bus ahead of ours. They were being killed, 3 by 3. It was like a haystack of bodies.
I came back with my son, and I told him to lay down. I started beating and kicking him. I was crying, please don't do that, you'll kill my child. One guard hit me. Another guard said, don't kill him, he's old, he's not important. Better to kill younger men.
Yesterday, we went to the sites of detention camps in Bosnia, sites of atrocities. Now, the survivors are speaking.
The world has to be aware of everything that happened.
Tonight, a look at what could be the first foreign crisis for the new administration, and a startling proposal from a Nobel Peace Prize winner.
I would suggest to President Bush, for instance, even now, these are the last weeks of his presidency, to do something imaginative. Why shouldn't he summon other leaders of the world and go to Sarajevo?
Tonight, part 2, Bosnia, the hidden horrors.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Perhaps no generation of humans since the beginning of time has had a greater exposure to violence than this generation of Americans. Violence suffuses our culture in a way that was simply never possible before. There is not a day that goes by that dozens, sometimes hundreds of people are not killed for entertainment on television and in the movies. They're not really killed, of course, but such is the skill of the special effects and makeup artists in our entertainment industry that it's almost as good as the real thing. And then, of course, there's always the news. What would we be without the appropriate daily dose of murder and mayhem? And yet somehow none of that adequately prepares us for the full range of inhumanity of which man is still capable. We will not show you tonight what has happened in Bosnia. It's difficult enough merely to listen to eyewitness accounts. But if you can, you should listen, as Nightline correspondent Dave Marash did on a just-completed trip to what was Yugoslavia.
Of all the images of the violence in Bosnia-Herzegovina, none strike so deep or stick so hard in the human heart as the pictures taken last August in the Serbian-run detention center in the village of Ternopilje.
When I arrived at Ternopilje, I couldn't believe I was alive and there.
Sami was one of the Ternopilje prisoners videotaped by news crews.
We weren't allowed to speak to the reporters. There was a soldier shouting, "Kill all those at the fence," talking to the newspapermen. So after I heard that, I snuck out through the people and lay on the grass as if that was not my concern.
You could see that threat mirrored on the face of Dr. Idris, who ran the Ternopilje clinic.
Did you get any cases here of people who've been beaten from the other camp? Many?
They just saw me shrug. I just shrugged and said nothing. Of course, one was not allowed to speak. You always had a guide.
Today, Dr. Idris is safe in the refugee camp at Karlovac. Today, he can tell the truth about Ternopilje.
In the camp, some people died from beatings. Others died because we weren't allowed to take them to hospitals. There were a lot of people taken out of the camp and killed.
In all, Dr. Idris says about 200 men were killed at Ternopilje, and beatings, he says, were constant.
They took me to a room and beat me up. Then they tied me up with wire and forced me to kiss the mutilated face of a man. The room was awash with blood.
Najad's battered body was photographed this summer by Dr. Idris.
We didn't actually see the beatings, but we were in the room next to where they were taking place. We could hear the beating and the crying.
I lost control. I swore at them. I ran to the window to vomit, and I tried to jump out, but I hit the wall between the windows.
For women, the constant fear was rape.
They would just come in and choose the women they liked for themselves. Some of them were returned in a day or two, some during the night, and some never came back again.
Dr. Idris says the Ternopil camp military commander once tried to discipline a rapist.
When the rest of the soldiers found out about that, they got drunk and drove 2 tanks in front of the main military barracks and gave an ultimatum that the soldier had to be released, or else they would shoot at their own barracks. So they released the soldier.
Ternopil prisoners who the Serbs judged harmless could buy their way out. Convoys were organized to take them to Muslim-held territory. The convoys out of Ternopil were meant to leave here with mostly women and children, but on at least one occasion, a couple of 100 men were allowed to squeeze on board the buses. The guards didn't seem to mind. These were just fresh passengers to rob of money, watches, jewelry, whatever they had.
Each bus had 2 men as escorts, and one of them took a PVC bag to collect all our valuables, money, gold and watches. One said, if we find any valuables left, we'll cut your heads off.
The convoy proceeded without incident until it pulled off the road on Vlasic Mountain, about 20 miles north of the Muslim town of Travnik. Bahria is one of half a dozen survivors Nightline has located who confirm what happened next.
And the man who was in charge of our bus gets in and he says, I'll call out names and those people have to leave the bus.
Selim was on a second bus stopped by the road.
A soldier came and told us that women, children, old men and the sick should get on a truck. The young men had to stay where they were. In front of me there was a woman with 2 children. I decided to go in ahead of her. I had a bad feeling about what was happening. I passed 3 soldiers, but no one stopped me. I jumped onto a truck, snuck by the others and hid in the back of the truck.
That instinct saved his life. He and the truckload of women and children went on to safety. About 150 men were left behind.
They told us to cross the road and to stop at the edge of a cliff.
With Bahria was a second witness who wouldn't speak directly to camera, but who did detail his experience for me and artist Dražen Petrovic. His story perfectly matches Bahria's and the others.
We were told to kneel and to keep our heads down. I heard one guy say, now you're going to stay here for a while. And I thought they were going to negotiate our release. When I heard the shots, I pushed the man in front of me and jumped over the cliff.
The 2 men tumbled and slid down the gorge, slowing themselves by grabbing at bushes till they reached the bottom.
I saw them dropping hand grenades and shooting down the hill at the dead bodies. Then I looked up and saw the people from the bus ahead of ours. They were being killed 3 by 3. It was like a haystack of bodies, and I also noticed some black corpses that were obviously there from before.
The 2 men eventually were captured and questioned by investigators from the Bosnian Serbian Army. Regional Commander General Momir Talic.
Our investigation showed that no soldiers participated.
Having cleared themselves, General Talic's men turned over both survivors to the police in Banja Luka. But Police Chief Stojan Zuplianin told me,
we have no living witnesses who can confirm or deny the incident.
At least Zuplianin admits the incident occurred. He says it's under investigation and he showed us files of evidence. Even let us watch his ballistics expert examine bullets that were found at the scene. He promises.
The Serbian people will see to it that all the guilty parties are tried in a court of law.
Small consolation for the relatives of the victims. Nizveta's husband was last seen alive on Vlasic Mountain.
I lost my husband. The children are orphans. Everything fell apart. But I hope he's alive somewhere and that he'll come back one day. I always hope.
Later in this broadcast, more of my conversation with the man invited to inspect the Bosnian prison camps, Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel. But first, when we come back, a visit to an interrogation center where hundreds may have died.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by IBM.
No one has to tell you that doing business today is more challenging than ever. But all over the world, one company is helping you meet those challenges head on, no matter what it takes. New challenges, new thinking.
We
chose AT&T because our 800 service is our front door. If it shuts down, we shut down. To us, a single 800 call could be worth thousands of dollars. If a customer dials our 800 number and can't get through, it's like telling them to take their business somewhere else. When you have competition like I do, you better be there for your customers.
Every 8-ounce bag of Kraft shredded mozzarella is made from 2 quarts of milk. How do they do that?
Well, 2 giants pour the milk into the cheese that it got so big that it exploded into little pieces.
Every 8-ounce bag of Kraft shredded mozzarella is made from 2 quarts of milk. That's why it always tastes better than imitation shreds, made with almost no milk at all. Kraft shredded mozzarella. For all the taste, all the time.
K-R-A-F-T. I love that story.
It would be one of the most important news events of our time. It would mean the end of a major cause of heart disease, the elimination of a major cause of kidney disease, the eradication of a major cause of blindness. It's why we're spending millions in research dollars every year to make it happen. Won't you support one of the greatest research efforts of our time?
The Nation of Islam says it has a cure for AIDS. Thousands of victims buy into it.
It's almost like a miracle.
Chris Wallace has the truth. Primetime, Thursday.
Amid the horrors recounted by the survivors, one location stands out for its brutality. An isolated prison camp where prisoners were questioned.
The war in Bosnia was essentially an improvised operation. Large holding-type prison camps had to be where there were already large buildings. Most of these were near towns. But this prison camp, Omarska, was different. 2 miles from the nearest highway, surrounded by open-pit iron mines. This was an interrogation center. Only 2 people died here. The camp's chief of security, Željko Majakic, told me that during a brief tour of the facility last week. An official U.S. State Department report to the United Nations says the real number could be as high as 1,400 killed at Omarska. What had once been administrative offices were used to question prisoners here, Majakic said. The interrogations, former prisoners say, were vicious.
The moment of arrival was the worst for me. Those first 3 days, we didn't eat anything. There were 162 of us in the same room. Even the paint started to peel.
I was the oldest prisoner in the camp. I know what a camp means. In 1945, I was in a camp as well. I know the rules of a camp, but there were no rules in this camp.
What former residents here remember are not questions and answers, but humiliation and torture and death. We spent day after day stretched out on our stomachs on the concrete of that parking area, they told me. They used the pits to bury corpses, said others softly. One place at Omarska that made voices quaver, eyelids flutter, and hands shake every time I asked about it was a small concrete structure behind the big garage where mine equipment was kept. The White House, the torture chamber.
From the other room, you could hear the sound of beatings. You hear when a man falls, when 4 men lift someone and throw him. You can hear how they beat him with a birch branch, or the dead thud of a club, or kicking him with boots.
In every shift, there must be some madman. For me, it was Grumman's shift. His shift was the worst one. Maybe he had some scores to settle. During his shift, the corridors were splattered with blood.
Sometimes there was the pretense at gathering information, determining responsibility for acts of war.
Someone was a sniper, someone a machine gun runner, someone a grenade thrower. For everyone, they had a charge, which was a good enough reason to beat up a person. If we'd really had that many snipers or fighters, Priador and Kozarats would never have fallen.
But the pretense was thin. Who gathers information like this?
I onda pucal oko glave iš majsara.
They shot around my head with a machine gun. One beat me on the back. I stretched out, pretended to be dead. One of them said, "He looks dead, he's finished." Another said, "Let's throw him in with the dead." They took me by the hair and feet and threw me down. I was there for an hour and a half amongst the dead. There was another man alive, but his legs were cut off and the earth buried him. I escaped the earth and he could not, and he was buried alive. I was back in the hall for 3 days when they called my name again. One of them said he was finished in the White House. They killed him there. And they said, well, if he hadn't been killed, we'd kill him now.
At Omarska, many would gladly join the dead or change places with them.
They called out my name and asked me if I had a son called Enver. I said yes. They told me, go find him. I came back with my son and they told him to lay down. They started beating and kicking him. I was crying, please don't do that, you'll kill my child. One guard hit me. Another guard said, don't kill him, he's old, he's not important. Better to kill younger men. Then they grabbed me and took me away while my son lay there crying. I left him screaming and crying for help. And then I heard a guard say, you'll never be able to have children again.
He was castrated. I couldn't watch anymore. The shrieks were unlike anything I'd heard. You wouldn't see it in a film. You can't describe it in words.
More from Dave Marash when we come back, and then we'll be joined by the Nobel laureate who has been invited to inspect the Bosnian camps, Elie Wiesel.
Whose romance with the road is rekindled with each sunrise. Beautiful mornings begin at 8. Super 8 Motels. 1-800-800-8000.
Ask anyone who's driven a Ford lately. Ask them why Ford sales are increasing faster than any division in America, domestic or import. They may tell you about safety, or performance, or quality. But on the bottom line, what they'll really be telling you about is satisfaction. Have you driven a Ford lately? It's more than just a question. It's an answer.
I'm not sure if you know this. There are over 600,000 words in the English language. Most of us use 2,000 of them. What happened to the rest? They're on paint cans, confusing the heck out of everybody. That's why I'm introducing Ed Wiggins Private Stock. It's just as good a quality of paint as you can get, with the easiest instructions you've ever seen, to make painting a whole lot easier and to prevent you from coming up with a few choice words of your own.
Inside flat paint on sale at Menards, only $8.79.
Katie was just 6. She was the youngest of our children. She was a little tomboy. She was funny, spirited, just full of life. And when she died, we donated her organs so that another child might live.
To say thank you is so inadequate. Tommy is our only son. What a gift you have given us. Yesterday, Tommy did something we never thought possible. Yesterday, he turned 6.
Become an organ or tissue donor. Check the back of your license. Give someone the chance of a lifetime.
He kidnapped an Exxon executive, locked him in a box, let him die. Now he tells me his story, as does the widow of his victim, a 2020 exclusive, Friday.
Many of the men who lived through Omarska are today at a POW camp called Manjača, high in the Bosnian mountains on a treeless, windswept plateau. 3,500 men live here in uninsulated cattle barns. Days are spent dozing or playing with homemade cards. Nights are already too cold for sleeping. I was told we walk around just to stay warm. Still, said one prisoner, the difference between this place and Omarska is the difference between heaven and hell. Hell's warmth may be welcome when real winter comes.
It's correct to say that this place is still not prepared for winter.
How do you see your future, I asked men here at Manjača camp. We'd like to stay in Bosnia, they said, if things would only return to normal. But could you trust your Serb neighbors to be normal, I asked. No, they said. Their hands are too steeped in blood. Seeing the worst of poverty, abuse, human victimization, we ask, who did this? Who's responsible? At the concentration camp at Ternopilje,
as soon as the people came, they were just pushed into the camp. They were left to organize themselves.
Today, much has changed at Ternopilje. No more starvation, no more torture, no more rapes. But still, there is terror. The 2,500 people still here fear the attention of the Serbs in the villages around them and the neglect of the international relief workers who they now rarely see. Please tell the International Red Cross to come immediately, they pleaded to us. Living conditions at Ternopilje are simply awful. Dozens crowd into the small rooms of the old village schoolhouse. Hundreds live together inside the auditorium. Outside, the yard is a mixture of mud and human wastes, where men, women, and children wash, wander, and wait for deliverance that's slow to come. Scarred by the past, pained by the present, many Muslim refugees can't even conceive of a future.
There is nothing. So many things have happened to me. It doesn't make any difference whether I live or die.
I don't think I have any hope. Inside, everything freezes up since this awful, tragic thing happened.
I had a lot of Serbian friends before, more than Muslim friends. I thought everything that I'd been through was a bad dream until I saw the bodies, until I saw that man could so easily kill in cold blood.
It's important for the world to know that one nation of people growing up together can get to the point that a neighbor can kill a neighbor. That's almost impossible to believe for a normal person.
I try to imagine life after this, but it's impossible. Such a large number of people are missing. I don't know, it's difficult when all your people have disappeared, your relatives and the people you saw every day have all gone. It's terribly frightening. It's difficult to understand how so many people can disappear in such a short time. I can't understand it, that this could be done by people who until yesterday were my friends.
I will never forget Prijedor. Ever.
As a philosopher, teacher, and writer, Elie Wiesel has been an eloquent reminder of the horrors of the Holocaust, of which he is a survivor. But he has been much more, speaking for the rights of persecuted people around the world. For his efforts, he received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986. Recently, he was invited to inspect the Bosnian camps. Earlier, I spoke with Mr. Wiesel, who was in New York. During yesterday's program, you made reference to the need for the moral imperative that should drive leaders to do something. But you are enough of a realist to know that national leaders operate in the interests of their own countries, not necessarily in the interests of people who are suffering in other countries. How do we resolve that dilemma?
Ted, I believe that if we sin against humanity, then it hurts our national interests. If we remain insensitive to the suffering, to the killing, to the humiliation, to the organized, calculated humiliation in Yugoslavia, in any part and in all parts of Yugoslavia, then something is wrong with our society and its leadership. So it is in our national interest that something should be done to stop all that, and we can.
Elie, you can say that about Bosnia-Herzegovina, you can say that about Somalia, you can say that about Ethiopia, you can say that about Cambodia, you can say that about any number of states in Africa and in Latin America. There are limits to what a country, even as great as the United States, can do. What are you recommending that the United States do?
There are no limits. First of all, that I do say that really about Somalia too. And again, I'm so pleased to learn. I'm proud that you are doing another program on Somalia, which is the same tragedy, even worse, than the tragedy in Yugoslavia. But I would do, well, I'm not a politician. I'm not a military expert, but I would suggest to President Bush, for instance, even now, these are the last weeks of his presidency, to do something imaginative. Why shouldn't he summon other leaders of the world and go to Sarajevo, have a summit meeting in Sarajevo? It would capture the imagination of so many young people in the world. Then they would feel that they are obligated, they would feel they are committed, they would feel that we are doing something against the utter injustice which death signifies and incarnates.
You know that grand gestures like that have been made in the past, and yet when there is a determination on the part of those in power to eliminate the helpless, they still go ahead and do it.
Oh, I don't think that such gestures have been made. Can you imagine that, really, that Bush and Mitterrand and John Major and a few other leaders would come to Sarajevo? First of all, at least for one day or two, you may be sure that the killing would stop. And a few more children would remain alive. A few more women would not be widows. It would create something. Just imagine, really, what that would do to the world press. You would have thousands of journalists.
I know, for example, you're an old friend of François Mitterrand. Have you ever made that proposal to him?
Well, he went to Sarajevo, by the way. You know, he went for one day to Sarajevo. He was the only one who went there. Otherwise, that, my good friend, listen, you know very well that this century is a very special century. And unless we do something, that the history of that century will be a kind of story from Sarajevo to Sarajevo.
Elie Wiesel, on that somber note, let me thank you once again for being with us, and I wish you well on your mission if and when you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be back in a moment.
If you're printing to the LPT1, try printing to the LPT1C :\Windows. The device command in this example sets up the HIM.
Oops.
What?
What did I do?
I don't know. Page
What are you
99.
guys
doing? You've been fooling with that thing for 3 days now.
Making it easy to use.
So we'll be more productive.
If it is productive much longer, we'll go out of business.
If you want a computer that's easy to use, there's still only one way to go.
Sum it up, point C, you can't afford. Point D, we don't offer.
Which leaves us with point E. We're working on that one.
Well, gentlemen, ladies, I trust you'll make the right choice.
It's the same. Let's get MCI in here.
Now save 25% on selected Goodyear all-season radials for cars and light trucks. Save 25% on Invicta GS. Save 25% on Wrangler AT and HT. That's right, save 25%. Where? Goodyear. When? Now.
I can't remember. It was something.
Nicoderm, nicotine transdermal system.
Yeah, it's called Nicoderm. Oh, yeah, the patch.
Nicoderm, huh?
Yeah, it's a patch.
Nicoderm, derm, by prescription only.
Wow, somebody must think I'm special.
Because you got Raisin Bran?
Not just Raisin Bran, Post Premium Raisin Bran. With not just lots, but hundreds of big plump raisins.
Look at all I got.
And these flakes, premium, with not just whole wheat bran too.
So it's good for you.
Somebody sure thinks I'm special.
It's me and Mommy.
Post Premium Raisin Bran makes everybody feel like somebody's special.
Morning to Las Vegas. The glitter, the gambling, the glamour. Cast your fortune with Good Morning America, Thursday.
Tomorrow evening, a primetime investigation. The health minister of the Nation of Islam claims he has a miracle cure for AIDS. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
Nightline is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Come on, let me show you what it's all about.
It's about romance on the rails.
I can't go to your room.
I'll leave the door open. How did you find my bunk?
I was very naughty.
Would a true gentleman steal a kiss from a lady?
Is that an invitation?
Yes.
It's a whistle-stop tour to trouble on Homefront. Thursday.
You're watching Channel 5.
Hear how it flows off the forked tongue of Mr. Don Rickles.